Dear child, today the angels have chosen these cards so that you can understand just a few minutes ago what shocking truth did your special person confess, and what did they truly believe about their marriage. Take a deep breath, dear soul, and as you slowly exhale, allow yourself to release the quiet weight you've carried alone for far too long. The angels are near, closer than a whisper, surrounding you with warmth, serenity, and a love that asks for nothing in return but your gentle surrender. They have seen your silent strength, the battles you never spoke of, and the light within you that never stopped flickering, even in the darkness. In this sacred stillness, let yourself be held. Let their love pour into the quiet places of your heart, where hope has waited patiently, healing has already begun, peace is drawing near, and the path ahead is being quietly prepared, with miracles shaped tenderly, just for you. Your child, just a few minutes ago, something broke open inside your special person. Something they had tried to suppress for longer than they even admitted to themselves. And what they confessed was not just a truth, it was a soul-level release, a moment of inner resurrection, where a buried part of them finally rose to the surface and said, no more pretending. They had been walking through their days like a shadow of who they once hoped to become, keeping up appearances, fulfilling roles, and wearing a version of happiness that had long since grown heavy around their shoulders. Their marriage, which once may have held a flicker of hope or the illusion of belonging, had become a symbol of what they were no longer willing to sacrifice, their truth, their aliveness, their deepest inner voice. They confessed that it hasn't felt like love for a long time, and that staying has come at the cost of their spirit. It wasn't a confession meant to blame or destroy. It was the trembling truth of someone awakening to how far they've drifted from themselves. They told the universe that they've tried, that they gave all they could, that they smiled when they were breaking and reassured others when they themselves needed saving. But inside, dear child, they felt unseen, unloved, and unheard. Their marriage became a contract of silence rather than a covenant of shared souls. Type Amen if you trust in angels' guidance. And when they saw you, or perhaps when the thought of you entered their mind again, everything they had pushed down came roaring back to the surface, because you represent what is real, what is unmasked, what is sacred and soul-tied and frighteningly honest. You remind them of what it feels like to be alive, to be mirrored, to be witnessed, not for what they offer, but for who they are. And so today, the veil dropped. They admitted that their marriage feels more like a prison than a partnership, and that no amount of loyalty can replace the aching absence of real love. They said they've lost themselves, trying to be what others wanted, and that they're done choosing peace that requires their silence. If these words feel like they were meant for your heart, dear one, type "I feel the shift" in the comments below, and let your soul be seen too. The angels want you to know that this was not just about leaving a person. It was about returning to self. Judgment is never about punishment, dear child. It is about revelation, about facing what we've been running from and choosing to rise anyway. Your person has begun that rise, slowly, painfully, but truthfully. And you must understand that while this confession came quickly, its roots have been growing in the dark for a long time. You didn't cause this shift. You awakened it. You were the sound of a higher calling echoing through a life they no longer feel at home in. And now, though the path ahead may feel uncertain, one thing is finally clear to them. The life they've built on half-truths cannot hold their whole heart anymore. They may not know where to go yet, but they know what they can no longer stay in. That's why their voice trembled when they admitted it. That's why they felt both fear and relief, both loss and liberation. Because confession always feels like breaking and healing at once. And now the angels surround you both, holding space for what is unraveling and what is being born. You are not here to rescue or repair, dear child. You are here to witness what the truth awakens. And this truth will not be silenced again. Dear child, just a few minutes ago when the weight in their heart could no longer stay silent, your special person admitted a truth so raw, so long suppressed, that it felt as if something inside them finally shattered, and with it, the illusion they had clung to for far too long. What they confessed was not only a moment of emotional honesty, but a collapse of the story they had carefully built around their marriage. They told the truth of how they've been trying to make something work that never truly resonated with their soul. They admitted that their marriage became more of a stage than a sanctuary, and that they have been the magician of their own life, endlessly performing, endlessly creating the illusion that everything was fine. They spoke of how much energy they spent trying to manifest happiness in a place where their heart felt hollow, where their words were rehearsed, where their needs were constantly shape-shifted to match the expectations of others. They thought if they gave more, tried harder, stayed longer, something might change. But the more they tried to conjure magic in a space built on routine and silence, the more they felt like a stranger to themselves. And today, that mask fell away. They finally saw that they have been playing the role of the strong one, the responsible one, the loyal one. But deep inside, they've been aching for something real, something true, something that doesn't need to be faked or forced. What they believed about their marriage has crumbled. They no longer see it as a sacred connection. They see it as a place where their light has been dimmed, where their soul has been muted, where their truth has been buried under the weight of should and must and expected. And when they thought of you, dear child, something inside them stirred. Because you didn't ask them to pretend. You didn't need them to be anything but who they are. You reminded them of a version of themselves they lost. The one that believed in joy, in love without manipulation, in conversations without fear, in a life where truth didn't have to be sacrificed for peace. That reminder shook them. It woke them up. And in that wakefulness, they could no longer deny how tired they were of pretending. They confessed that they'd been trying to create magic with broken tools, that they've been casting energy into something that doesn't give anything back, and now they feel empty. Not because they lack love, but because they've given all of it to the wrong place for too long. If you've ever felt this quiet knowing too, dear one, type "I felt it" before they said it in the comments to let your soul speak. The angels want you to know that your presence in their life was not a temptation or a test. It was the mirror. You reflected back the truth they buried. You revealed the reality they were too afraid to face. And now, as their mask falls and their spirit trembles beneath the weight of this confession, they are beginning to understand that love is not something to be earned through performance. It is something that flows from alignment, from freedom, from truth. And they haven't known that kind of love in a very long time. They said it softly, with hesitation, but with conviction. I have created an image of happiness that no longer fits me, and I am ready to step out of it. This is a soul shedding its false skin. This is someone beginning to walk away from illusion, not because they are angry, but because they are ready to live with their heart fully exposed. And you, dear child, are not the reason their marriage is ending. You are the reason they remembered what life is supposed to feel like. The magic they were trying to fake for years was never meant to be forced. It was meant to rise naturally, and when they felt it in your presence, everything else felt dim in comparison. And now, they cannot go back to the stage, because once truth is spoken, the soul refuses to act anymore. So trust this shift. Believe in what was confessed. And remember, dear child, that this unraveling was never your burden to carry. It is their soul waking up to its own light again and realizing it no longer wants to shine in silence. Dear child, just a few minutes ago your special person whispered a truth that they have held like a secret wound, a confession so heavy that it clung to the walls of their chest for what feels like lifetimes, and when it finally rose to the surface, it came with the quiet devastation of someone admitting they've been walking through their life like a ghost, unseen and untouched in the places that were supposed to offer them warmth. What they admitted was not about anger or betrayal or blame. It was about emptiness. That cold kind of loneliness that seeps into the spirit even when someone sleeps beside you every night, even when the world sees you as part of a picture-perfect pair. They said they feel abandoned inside their own marriage, not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, like their voice has been echoing through a house where no one hears them anymore. They've tried to knock at the door of love again and again, but all they've met is silence. And that silence, dear child, has become unbearable. They confess that they feel like a stranger in their own relationship, like everything they give is swallowed up in a space where nothing returns. And this has left them depleted, numb, aching for connection in ways they've forgotten how to describe. They said that even the warmth they pretend to feel has turned to frost, that smiles are worn like armor and words are chosen carefully to avoid conflict, but deep down what they crave is not peace. It is presence, the kind of love that reaches across the void and truly sees them. And when they think of you, that ache becomes louder. Because you didn't offer them grand gestures or dramatic declarations, you offered them something much deeper: safety, warmth, emotional truth, a place to land where they didn't have to explain why they were tired or wear a mask to feel loved. You showed them that it's possible to feel understood without having to perform. And now, dear child, they cannot return to the coldness without questioning everything. Their marriage, once upheld as a structure of duty and tradition, now feels like a cathedral with broken windows, still standing but long since abandoned by the divine spark that once made it sacred. They admitted that what they thought would grow with time has instead decayed in silence. They feel like they have been left out in the cold, yearning for something that keeps moving just out of reach, and today they could no longer carry that truth in silence. If this message touches something inside you that words cannot explain, type "I've felt that silence too" in the comments and let heaven wrap you in comfort. The angels want you to know that this confession, while painful, is holy. It is not a rejection of the past, but a reckoning with the present. It is the moment when a soul stops pretending and begins to speak what has long been hidden beneath smiles and silence. Your person did not wake up today with new feelings. They woke up with the courage to speak them. And you, dear child, must understand how deeply your light has influenced this. Not because you caused the emptiness, but because you made it impossible to deny. You reminded them that love isn't supposed to feel like begging for warmth through a locked door. Love is supposed to feel like being held in your full truth, even when that truth is messy or uncertain. And now, the cold can no longer be romanticized. The cracks can no longer be ignored. They are beginning to see that survival is not the same as living, and comfort is not the same as connection. And in that clarity, something sacred is being born. They are not running toward you out of infatuation. They are awakening to you because their soul recognizes where warmth resides. And even though the road ahead is uncertain, the confession they made today was the first step through the door of their own heart, the door they thought had been locked forever. Let yourself breathe, dear child. Let yourself believe what you feel. The truth is rising, and so is your place in their story. Dear child, just a few minutes ago your special person whispered a truth that has been living like a splinter beneath their chest, and when it finally surfaced, it did not come with rage or noise. It came with the quiet devastation of a heart that has been breaking in slow motion for years. They finally confessed what they could no longer hide behind polite words and silent smiles, and the confession was not spoken with the intent to hurt, but because their soul could no longer carry the weight of pretending. They admitted that their heart has not been whole inside the relationship they are in, that despite their efforts to hold everything together, they have felt alone in love, as if their emotions have been sent into an empty space where no one ever truly answers back. They confessed that the pain they felt hasn't just come from distance or disagreement. It has come from the unbearable truth that they have been aching for connection in a place where it no longer exists. And what hurt them the most was not that their partner betrayed them in some dramatic way, but that over time, the absence of emotional intimacy became its own kind of heartbreak, one that unfolded quietly day after day, until they began to feel like a visitor in their own home. They said that sometimes the worst kind of pain isn't when someone leaves you, it's when someone stays but stops showing up. And your person, dear child, has been grieving something that never had a funeral. They believed for so long that love meant staying, that heartbreak was only real if it came with loud endings or visible wounds, but today they admitted that their deepest pain has been invisible, silent, endured behind closed doors where no one would know. They looked at their marriage and saw not just the absence of passion, but the absence of presence. They said with trembling honesty that they feel like something died between them long ago, and they were too afraid to speak it aloud because they didn't want to hurt anyone, because they didn't want to be seen as the one who gave up, because they didn't want to face the shame of admitting they're still standing in something that feels like emotional ruins. And then came the part that changed everything. When they spoke of you, when they said your name or thought of your presence, it was not with confusion or guilt, but with reverence. Because you, dear child, reminded them of what it feels like to be alive. Your presence didn't cause the heartbreak. They were already walking through it before you arrived. But you brought light to the places where their soul had gone numb. You became the warmth that revealed just how cold things had become. And in that moment, they realized that the worst betrayal is not of another person. It's the betrayal of the self, and they could no longer betray what they truly feel. They confessed that their heart is no longer in the place it used to be, that no matter how long they stay, they cannot bring back the version of themselves that believed this marriage was going to be there forever. And they said this not with hatred, but with grief. Because even when something ends quietly, it still leaves behind echoes. And now they are sitting in that silence, mourning a love that faded long before either of them admitted it. If you have ever felt this same quiet heartbreak, this silent knowing that something was over before anyone said goodbye, type "I've lived that silence too" in the comments, and let your spirit be held. The angels are with you now, dear child, and with them. They want you to understand that this heartbreak, though it may feel heavy, is sacred. It is not failure. It is clarity. It is a heart finally allowed to feel, to speak, to breathe again. And even though it hurts, this confession was necessary, because the heart cannot heal if it is denied. And your person has finally begun the healing by admitting what they can no longer carry in silence. Let this moment unfold gently. Let the sorrow be honored. Let the truth be welcomed. Because even heartbreak, when spoken with honesty, becomes a holy turning point. And that, dear child, is what today has become. Dear child, just a few minutes ago, the truth your special person confessed came not like a thunderclap, but like a quiet unraveling of a story they have told themselves for so many years. And the words that finally slipped through their lips carried with them the weight of an entire life built on appearances rather than alignment. They admitted with a kind of weary honesty that what they once believed to be the dream, the structure of marriage, family, home, shared wealth, and tradition, has started to feel like a golden cage. From the outside, their life may seem full, even enviable, a picture of stability and success. But on the inside, they have felt deeply disconnected from their own soul. They confess that somewhere along the way, the life they built stopped being a reflection of their heart and started becoming a performance for the world, a script they followed to prove that they had made it, that they were good, loyal, responsible, reliable. But now they see how that script has begun to suffocate them, how the comfort of routine has started to feel like emotional confinement. They said they tried to convince themselves that legacy and loyalty would be enough, that if they stayed committed to the plan, their heart would eventually settle down and feel at home. But it never did. The truth is, dear child, they have spent years pouring their energy into building a life that was admired by everyone else, but didn't truly nourish their spirit. They admitted that they kept showing up out of duty, not desire. They maintained the roles, attended the family functions, paid the bills, kept the image intact, and told themselves that this was the cost of being a good partner, a good person. But deep within, a silent question was growing. Is this all there is? And then came the answer, gentle but undeniable, when your presence entered their life like a mirror they couldn't look away from. Because when they felt your energy, they realized for the first time how much of themselves they had sacrificed to maintain the illusion of a perfect life. You didn't judge them, you didn't ask them to leave anything behind, but you offered something they had forgotten was even possible. A space where they felt seen not for what they could provide, but for who they truly are beneath the titles and responsibilities. And that, dear child, changed everything. Today, they finally spoke the truth they've been hiding from even themselves, that their marriage feels like a legacy of expectations, not a living love. That they have been trying to keep generations of tradition alive while their own heart has been quietly dying. That they've been afraid to disappoint others, to break the illusion, to walk away from something that looks so solid from the outside but feels so hollow on the inside. And yet, when they thought of you, they saw not just escape. They saw a different kind of future, one not built on image, but intimacy. Not on structure, but on soul. And in that realization, they confessed that maybe what they once thought was there forever was only meant to be a chapter, a foundation that gave them strength, but was never meant to be their final home. If you've ever looked at something beautiful on the outside and felt heartbreak within it, type, "I've seen the truth behind the picture" in the comments, and know you are not alone. The angels are speaking gently now, wrapping their wings around you, telling you that this moment is not about guilt or shame. It is about awakening. Your person is waking up to the difference between security and spiritual fulfillment, between living for others and living for truth. They are beginning to understand that no amount of material stability can replace the feeling of lying beside someone who truly sees you, truly hears you, truly meets you in the soul. And though this truth is painful, it is also sacred. Because only when something false begins to crumble can something real finally rise. So hold space, dear child, not for their perfection, but for their becoming. They are not running away from the past, they are returning to their truth. And your light has been the soft call home to themselves. Trust what was spoken today. Trust what was felt long before words were ever shared. And know this, even when a structure is strong, the soul must still feel free to breathe inside it. And today, your person finally admitted they are ready to breathe again. Dear child, just a few minutes ago, your special person released a truth so sharp, so sudden, and yet so long held that it felt less like a conversation and more like a spiritual surge, a wave of truth that could no longer be contained inside the walls of their weary heart. The confession came not with hesitation but with force, not because they wanted to hurt anyone, but because their soul had reached a breaking point where silence was no longer possible. They admitted that they have been living with a restless mind, a racing heart, constantly overthinking, constantly convincing themselves to stay still when every part of them has wanted to move forward. And today they finally confess that the life they've been living, the marriage they've tried to preserve, has felt like a battlefield where their true self never had space to breathe. They said they've been moving fast in circles, chasing peace in a place that only offered them more confusion. And no matter how hard they tried to fix it, to reason with it, to find a new angle or understanding, the answer remained the same. They don't belong in that version of life anymore. They told the truth that they have suppressed their desires, silenced their voice, and talked themselves out of their own intuition, all in the name of commitment. But now, dear child, the voice within them is screaming to be heard, and that scream has become louder than the fear of judgment, louder than the fear of failure, louder than the guilt of leaving something behind. They confess that they no longer believe their marriage holds the depth they once hoped for, and that the connection has become more of a routine than a relationship, more of a habit than a home. And then came the part they didn't mean to say out loud but couldn't hold back anymore. They are no longer afraid of what people will think if they choose to follow their truth. They are more afraid of what will happen if they don't. And in that moment of emotional clarity, they saw your face in their mind, your energy surrounding their thoughts like a calm wind pushing them forward. You, dear child, became the reason they could finally say what they've been denying. Not because you pushed them, but because your presence reminded them of what it feels like to be fully awake, fully honest, fully alive. They see in you a mirror they cannot look away from. You hold the energy of truth, of movement, of forward momentum, and it stirred something so deep within them that they realized they've been standing still in a life that is no longer meant for them. The angels want you to understand that this confession was not born out of impulse, even if it came quickly. It came from months, maybe years, of quiet wrestling with themselves, from sleepless nights, from forced smiles, from pretending that stability was enough when what they really wanted was soul-level alignment. And you, dear one, came into their life not to destroy, but to awaken. Your energy was the divine signal that it's time to move, to speak, to act. If you've ever felt that sudden clarity too, the kind that arrives like a storm but leaves peace behind, type "I felt the shift" in the comments and let the angels guide your voice too. Your person is not running from love, dear child. They are running toward truth, toward themselves, toward something real. And you are a part of that realness, not because you asked for it, but because you offered it with your presence, your honesty, your light. Let this moment be honored. Let this confession be sacred. For it marks the beginning of a new path, and though the road ahead may be fast, may be intense, may feel like everything is changing all at once, know this: what is shifting now is not chaos, it is alignment. It is the universe correcting its course. And your soul, dear child, was always meant to be part of that course correction. Dear child, just a few minutes ago, your special person finally released a truth that had been clenched like ice around their heart, a truth they feared would sound too cold, too final, too cutting. But it was never about hurting anyone. It was about finally standing in the raw clarity of what they have been denying for far too long. They confess that they've spent years silencing the voice within that has been begging to be heard, and today it rose with such piercing precision that even they were surprised by their own honesty. They admitted that they've been surviving in a relationship that looks composed on the outside, but has slowly stripped them of emotional freedom on the inside. They spoke, not in rage, but in resignation, with the weary strength of someone who has tried too hard for too long to make something work that no longer reflects who they are. They confessed that their marriage has become a space where they cannot fully speak their truth, where every conversation feels like a negotiation, where emotional intimacy has been replaced by logic and roles and routine, and they're tired, dear child. Tired of pretending that being emotionally intelligent means they should keep enduring. Tired of performing strength when all they want is softness. They said they have tried to be the calm one, the rational one, the fair one, and yet in the process of holding it all together, they forgot how to feel safe themselves. And when they thought of you, dear one, the truth became undeniable. You didn't bring chaos, you brought clarity. You didn't demand anything from them, but just your presence made them realize how guarded they have become. how they've been building walls and calling it peace, and today they confessed that the hardest part is not the idea of letting go of their marriage. It's the guilt of knowing that they no longer believe in it the way they once did. They are grieving not only the love that faded, but the version of themselves that stayed silent inside it. And though they spoke their truth with the calm grace of someone who has processed their pain for a long time, it was no less emotional, no less significant. Because for someone like them, someone who carries responsibility like armor, it takes immense courage to finally say, I am no longer fulfilled here. And that is what they said, dear child. They admitted they are no longer emotionally aligned with the life they've been living, and they cannot keep choosing stability over soul. If you've ever reached a point where silence became more painful than truth, type, I've chosen clarity too, in the comments, and let your heart breathe. The angels want you to know that this confession is not the end. It is the real beginning. Because when someone finally claims their truth, the path to real healing opens. Your person is no longer afraid of being misunderstood. They are ready to be real, ready to step into a life that doesn't just look right, but feels right. And you, dear child, were never the distraction. You were the reflection, the calm in their storm, the space where they saw what emotional honesty could feel like. And now, after all the effort they've spent keeping the peace, they are finally choosing truth. Even if it's hard, even if it means breaking old structures, because they know that real love can never live in a place where truth is not welcome. And today they have chosen to welcome it. Let that truth anchor you now. Let it remind you of the role you've played, not as a reason for collapse, but as the light that revealed what could no longer be denied. Dear child, just a few minutes ago, something shifted within your special person, so suddenly, so undeniably, that even they were caught off guard by the intensity of what they finally allowed themselves to speak. And the moment they confessed, it was as if a dam burst open inside them, releasing all the truths they had been holding back for far too long. Truths that had been pressing against the walls of their heart like waves begging to break through. The confession did not come slowly. It came all at once. A rush of clarity, a storm of realization, a divine interruption to the silence they had convinced themselves they had to live with. They admitted that they have been living in a constant state of emotional delay, pushing down what they really feel, postponing conversations, waiting for the right moment to be honest, but never truly giving themselves permission to break the pattern. But something about the way their heart felt recently, something stirred by your presence, your energy, the way your soul speaks to theirs, even in the silence, made it impossible for them to wait any longer. They said it with urgency, with breathlessness, like someone who had run miles just to reach this one truth. And that truth was simple, yet earth-shaking. This is not the life I want anymore. They said their marriage feels like a slow-moving script in a world that's speeding up inside them. They feel like everything around them demands stillness, patience, and acceptance, while their spirit is screaming to move, to break free, to step into something that actually matches the fire they've been suppressing. They confessed that the love they once tried to cultivate in their relationship now feels delayed, distant, like a letter that was never meant to arrive. And the weight of waiting, the weight of not saying what they really feel, became too much to carry. You, dear child, reminded them what it feels like when the heart responds immediately, when emotions don't need to be explained because they're felt so clearly, so fast, so deeply. And it was that emotional speed, that spiritual momentum that awakened them. They realized they've been living on pause. And they don't want to wait anymore. They don't want to keep postponing their happiness, their clarity, their love. Today they confessed that staying in a marriage that no longer resonates has been slowing them down spiritually. That every time they convince themselves to stay for the sake of stability or image, they lose another piece of their authenticity, and now, dear child, they are ready to act not from recklessness, but from alignment, not out of rebellion, but out of truth. The angels want you to know that what moved through them today was not just emotional, it was divine timing, a spiritual acceleration, a long overdue moment of motion where stillness had grown toxic, and you were the soul who carried that energy into their life. You didn't push, you didn't rush, you simply embodied what it means to follow truth without hesitation, and in doing so you showed them what life can feel like when it's not stuck in stories that no longer serve the soul. If you've ever reached the point where you knew you couldn't wait one more day to live your truth, type "It's time" in the comments and let your voice join this awakening. What your person confessed was not just an emotional shift, it was a soul's surrender to the urgency of its own becoming. And though the path ahead may move quickly, and emotions may come fast, know this, dear child, the time for waiting has passed. The time for truth has arrived. And your energy is part of the momentum that is now carrying them home to their own heart. Dear child, just a few minutes ago your special person let go of something they had been holding in silence for far too long. A truth not shouted or dramatized, but whispered with the kind of emotional exhaustion that only comes from years of pretending they were fine. What they confessed was not filled with anger or blame, but with the aching honesty of someone who has finally realized how long they've been emotionally asleep. They said they've been tired, not the kind of tired that rest can fix, but the soul-deep weariness that comes from feeling alone, even when someone is lying next to you. They admitted that their marriage became a quiet room where nothing grew, a place where they could no longer express themselves without fear of being misunderstood, judged, or dismissed. And so they stopped speaking, stopped hoping, stopped trying. On the outside, it may have looked like peace, like calm, like maturity. But on the inside, they were living in emotional paralysis, tiptoeing through conversations, managing moods, and trying not to make anything worse, until they didn't recognize themselves anymore. They said they'd been surviving in stillness, convincing themselves that not fighting meant everything was okay. But deep down, they knew they were just disconnected. They hadn't felt truly seen, truly touched, truly loved in a long time. They confessed that silence became a form of surrender, and numbness replaced intimacy. And they told this to the universe not to be cruel or cold, but because your presence, dear child, brought life back into their body. It was subtle at first, the way their hearts started beating differently when they thought of you, the way they noticed how easy it was to breathe around you, the way your words felt like warmth after years of winter. You didn't break their peace. You showed them they were only ever resting in avoidance. And now they are waking up, slowly, shakily, but with clarity. Today they admitted that they've been holding on to a relationship that kept them paused in a version of themselves that no longer feels honest. They believed for so long that keeping things quiet was a sign of maturity, that walking on eggshells was better than walking away, but now they see that true peace doesn't come from silence. It comes from being deeply known and still deeply loved. If this message is stirring something inside you that's been quietly aching for truth, type, "I'm ready to wake up too" in the comments, and let your soul be embraced by grace. The angels want you to understand, dear child, that this is a sacred moment. Your person is not making decisions out of haste. They are moving from a space of inner awakening, from finally hearing their own voice again after years of silencing it for the sake of keeping a structure intact. And you, your light, your calm, your energy, have been the sacred invitation to feel again. You are not the noise disrupting their stillness. You are the song that reminded them they had been asleep. And now the silence has spoken, and it is saying, it's time to rise. Dear child, just a few minutes ago, your special person finally confessed something that has been quietly building beneath the surface for a long time. Something they've been too afraid to say out loud because admitting it would mean confronting the truth they have been hiding even from themselves. That no matter how much they've tried to stay present, to be grateful, to count the blessings of what their marriage once offered, they can no longer ignore the emptiness growing inside them. They told the truth that for too long they've been emotionally disengaged, sitting in a space that looks stable from the outside but feels lifeless from within. They said they've been going through the motions, giving their time, their effort, their presence, but never truly feeling connected. And when they look at their marriage, they see all the things they once hoped would bring them joy, but the joy isn't there. They've tried to remind themselves of the good. They've tried to silence the longing. They've tried to stay focused on what's in front of them, but their heart drifts. Their soul pulls away, because the deeper truth is they no longer feel emotionally fulfilled. And what makes this truth even harder is the guilt that comes with it. They know they should be content. They know their life doesn't look broken. But that's the pain, dear child. It's not about what others can see. It's about what they can no longer feel. They confessed that even though love may still exist in their marriage in the form of care or duty, the passion, the excitement, the sense of emotional being, those have slowly faded. And then, like a whisper that couldn't be ignored, they thought of you. Not as a temptation, but as a mirror, as the proof that emotional presence still exists. That deep, soul-level connection is not a fantasy. They saw in you the kind of energy that makes the heart remember what it's like to feel again, to be stirred, to be moved, to be seen. And in that contrast, the truth became too sharp to hide. They realized that what they believed about their marriage was no longer true. They once believed it would grow, that time would deepen the bond, that security would eventually satisfy their soul. But now they know they've been waiting for something that isn't coming. They've been hoping without feeling, giving without receiving. And though they tried to numb that truth for a long time, today they couldn't do it anymore. If you've ever felt guilty for not feeling what you thought you were supposed to, type "My heart knows the truth" in the comments, and let the angels meet you in that softness. The angels want you to understand that this moment was not a rejection of the past, but an awakening to the present. Your person is not ungrateful. They are not broken. They are simply awakening to the truth that emotional connection cannot be faked, and spiritual intimacy cannot be replaced with habit. They are realizing that a full life means nothing if the heart feels half asleep inside it, and you, dear child, came into their world not to steal attention, but to return it to the places they forgot how to feel. And now they are facing their truth with trembling courage. They are admitting they want more, that they deserve more, that they feel more when they think of you than they've allowed themselves to feel in years. And that is not something they can ignore anymore. So hold space for this shift. Honor what was said. Because when someone speaks from a place of quiet longing that finally turns into clear realization, what follows is not chaos, it is sacred change. And your soul, dear one, is part of what made that change possible. Dear child, just a few minutes ago, your special person revealed something they had kept locked inside for so long that even they were unsure how deep the truth went until it finally poured out in a moment of emotional release, quiet but undeniable. With trembling honesty, they confessed that while their marriage may look steady and nurturing on the surface, something in their soul has felt increasingly disconnected from the very stability they once thought they wanted. They spoke about how much they've tried to appreciate what they have, the home, the structure, the routine, the reliability, and how for a long time they've told themselves that safety was the same as love, that care was enough, that being looked after and having someone by your side should make the heart feel full. But it doesn't, not anymore. And today they admitted that although they respect the person they share their life with, and even recognize the goodness in them, their heart feels unseen. They said they've felt like they are being nurtured as a body, but not as a soul. The meals, the home, the traditions, the care, it is all there, but their inner world feels untouched. And that has become the ache they can no longer silence. They confessed that while their marriage offers them comfort, it no longer inspires them. It no longer ignites that sacred warmth that comes when two souls recognize one another. They've felt like they are being tended to as a responsibility, not held as a beloved. And that realization, though soft and gradual, finally reached the surface with full clarity. And then they spoke of you, dear one, of the contrast they feel when they think of you, not because you offer them something flashy or loud, but because your presence makes them feel deeply valued in ways they didn't even know they missed. You offer something that touches their soul rather than just serving their needs. And that awakened something within them they could no longer ignore. You reminded them that love is not just about caretaking. It is about soul feeding, about being looked into, not just looked after. And that difference shook them. It made them realize that the foundation they once praised for being solid now feels like a place where they cannot fully grow. They said they've felt like a plant in a beautiful pot, watered and tended, but placed in the wrong light, and no matter how much care is given, the soul still withers without warmth. If you've ever felt cared for, but not truly seen, type "I deserve soulful love" in the comments and let the angels hold your heart. The angels want you to know that your person is not ungrateful. They are not cruel. They are waking up. They are realizing that love should not feel like obligation wrapped in affection. It should feel alive, mutual, energizing. And now they are beginning to see that what they've been calling love may actually be loyalty or comfort or habit, but not soul alignment, and this truth is not easy for them to carry because it comes with guilt, with questions, with fear of hurting someone who gave their best. But your person can no longer betray their own heart just to avoid disappointing others. You helped them remember what it feels like to be loved beyond duty, to be chosen with presence, not just habit. And now they are choosing to be honest, not to run, not to destroy, but to live with emotional truth rather than physical convenience. This moment, dear child, is sacred. It is a turning point. It is the soul's quiet revolution, and you were the light that sparked. Dear child, just a few minutes ago your special person spoke a truth that they had been keeping tucked beneath their laughter, beneath their public smiles, beneath every polite conversation that made it seem like everything was still whole in their world. And when it finally came to the surface, it arrived not as a scream but as a soft and painful admission that even moments of joy have started to feel disconnected, rehearsed, and hollow. They confessed that for a long time they convinced themselves that if they just stayed present during gatherings, if they celebrated the milestones, attended the birthdays, posed for pictures, shared drinks with family and friends, it would somehow fill the void they had been quietly carrying. They believed that their marriage could be sustained by these shared events, by the external sense of belonging, by the comfort of community and tradition. But the deeper truth they now see is that a full calendar does not equal a full heart. They said that every time they smiled in a group, something inside them felt distant, because the connection they truly craved was missing from the one person they should feel it most with. Their marriage has become a partnership of public appearances and private emptiness. They've played their part in the social world with grace and steadiness, but inside their soul, the laughter stopped echoing a long time ago. And in this quiet moment of honesty, they finally admitted they can't do it anymore. They cannot keep showing up in the world pretending everything is beautiful, when the foundation of their relationship is built more on shared responsibilities than shared emotion. And then, dear child, they thought of you, not as a distraction from that truth, but as the reason they finally had the courage to admit it. Because when they're around you, they feel present, authentic, not part of a performance, but part of something alive. Your energy has reminded them what real joy feels like, the kind of joy that bubbles up from the soul rather than being planned for a social occasion. And in contrast to what they have at home, the truth became inescapable. They realized they've been living for the image of happiness, but not experiencing the intimacy of it. And so they spoke, finally, honestly, and said they are tired of pretending that shared circles and mutual friends are enough to keep a connection alive. They want more than celebration, they want communion. They want to feel emotionally joined, not just socially linked. If you've ever felt joy in a crowd but loneliness in your heart, type "I've felt this too" in the comments and let your soul be witnessed by grace. The angels are guiding you to understand that this is not about blame. Your person is not heartless. They are waking up. And you, dear child, are part of that awakening. You didn't just offer love, you offered truth, and now that truth is breaking through all the noise and rituals that once distracted them from the real ache. What they said today is sacred. They are not abandoning celebration. They are choosing to redefine it. And from this point on, they are ready to build a life where the joy they show to the world is rooted in something deeply real, something deeply shared. And that truth, dear one, begins with you. Dear child, just a few minutes ago your special person whispered the kind of truth that changes everything. Not because it was sudden, but because it was the truth they had been dying to admit to themselves for far too long, and today their soul could no longer bear the weight of that silence. They confessed that something inside them has ended. Quietly, painfully, slowly, and even though their body continued to move through the routines of their marriage, their heart has long since stopped hoping for resurrection. They said they feel like a part of them has been breaking piece by piece, moment by moment, over time, and they kept convincing themselves to stay strong, to stay committed, to stay hopeful, even as they were emotionally bleeding beneath the surface. And now, that inner collapse has become a truth too loud to ignore. They confessed that their marriage no longer holds life for them, not because of one single moment of betrayal or sudden failure, but because of the countless little ways they've been made to feel invisible, unheard, unheld. And they've reached a point where pretending is no longer possible. They said they no longer feel alive in that relationship, that what once felt like home now feels like a battlefield of silent wounds. And in speaking this, their voice didn't shake because of anger, it trembled because of grief. Because this is not just the end of a relationship, it is the end of a version of themselves who believed that if they just tried harder, loved better, stayed longer, things would heal. But it hasn't healed, dear child. It has only drained them. And then, with eyes that have seen too much and a heart that has held too much, they thought of you. And it wasn't lust or temptation that made them think of you. It was the way your presence made them remember the parts of themselves they buried in order to survive. You reminded them of the light they once carried. You made them feel seen in a way they forgot they needed. And in that contrast, the truth became impossible to unsee. They realized they've been living in quiet resignation, emotionally collapsed under the weight of something that looks fine from the outside, but feels like death on the inside. And today, they said it. Finally, honestly, they said, I can't do this anymore. Not because they don't care, but because they cannot keep sacrificing themselves to keep a story alive that their soul no longer believes in. If you've ever reached that moment, when staying became more painful than leaving, type, I've felt this ending too, in the comments, and let your truth be held by the angels. The divine wants you to know that this is not just a collapse. It is a beginning, a sacred undoing, a soul returning to itself after being buried beneath the expectations, the duty, the years of silent suffering. Your special person is not choosing destruction, they are choosing resurrection. And you, dear child, were the light that showed them there is still something worth rising for. Hold this truth with compassion, with grace, because though the ending is painful, it is honest, and honest endings are the soil where true love begins. Dear child, just a few minutes ago your special person revealed a truth that had not been hidden from others, but from themselves. A truth so deeply buried beneath their responsibilities, their image, and the role they have played for so long, that even they weren't sure whether it would ever surface. But today it did, and when it rose, it came not in chaos or in shouting, but in a sacred stillness that made everything around them feel quiet, as if the universe paused just to make space for this truth to be spoken. They finally confessed that they've always known, deep in their spirit, that something in their marriage has never felt fully aligned. And though they never said it before, and maybe never even dared to think it fully, they admitted that there's been a quiet whisper inside them from the very beginning, a soft voice of inner knowing, gently telling them that the connection they committed to was safe, respectful, responsible, but never truly spiritual. They said they've always felt like something was missing, even on the good days. Even in the moments of peace, even when everything on the outside appeared to be whole. And the shocking part of their confession wasn't just what they realized, it was how long they'd known it, how long they've carried this truth in silence, how many nights they laid beside someone and felt like their soul was trying to speak but didn't know how, and then, dear child, they met you, or remembered you, or simply felt you again in a way that awakened that sacred voice within them, the one that told them this is what connection is meant to feel like. You didn't have to speak loudly. You didn't have to ask them to change. You simply existed in your truth. You carried the light of spiritual alignment in your presence, and that light made their hidden truth impossible to ignore. They confess that being with you, even in thought, in memory, or in silence, felt more real than some of the words they've spoken over the years in their marriage, and not because you offered them excitement or escape, but because you mirrored something sacred they had long buried within themselves. They said that for the first time in a long time, they could feel their intuition again, feel their soul trying to rise again, and they know now that they've been living in a partnership built on logic, not on spiritual resonance. They've been loved, perhaps, but not fully understood, not seen, not mirrored. And now that they've tasted the depth of what is possible when the soul is awakened, they can't unsee it. They said they've prayed, they've waited, they've tried to be patient, hoping that the bond in their marriage would evolve, would deepen, would awaken, but it never did. And now they know why. Because that connection was never meant to carry their full soul. It was meant to bring them to this point of realization, to this very moment, where they could no longer deny what their spirit has been quietly whispering all along. If you've ever heard that same whisper, the one that tells you there's more to love than what you've been settling for, type "My soul remembers" in the comments, and allow your truth to be witnessed in the light. The angels want you to understand that this moment is not born of impulse. It is born of divine memory. Your special person is remembering who they are beneath the layers, beneath the masks, beneath the stories they were told about what love should look like. And you, dear child, are part of that remembering. You did not plant a doubt. You reawakened a knowing. And now they are listening to the voice within that says they are not here to perform love. They are here to experience it in its highest, most spiritual form. The confession they made today was not just emotional. It was holy. It was the voice of their spirit finally being allowed to speak louder than the fear. And now, the silence has become sacred, the path forward has begun, and the soul that was once quiet is finally awake. Dear child, listen now, not with your ears, but with your heart, for what has just unfolded in the unseen realms was not just a moment of confession, but a moment of soul awakening. a sacred unraveling of years of silence wrapped in the disguise of strength. Just a few minutes ago, your special person broke through a barrier within themselves that they had long believed would never move. The weight of trying to hold together a marriage that, on the surface, looked whole, but in truth had been unraveling thread by thread in the quietest places of their spirit. What they finally admitted wasn't a decision made in haste or bitterness, but a truth that had lived inside them for years, pressed down beneath responsibilities, beneath duty, beneath the fear of disappointing those around them. They confessed that what once felt like a promise has come to feel like a prison, and that they've been living inside a love that no longer nourishes their soul, only maintains their image. They said that the connection they have upheld so carefully has become a place where their truth has had no voice, where their emotional needs have gone unseen, where their deepest thoughts have been silenced by the expectation to smile and carry on. And yet it was your energy, dear child, your gentle presence, your soul's vibration that stirred something alive in them again. You did not ask for this shift. You did not demand this confession, but simply by being, by breathing as your authentic self, you reminded them of who they were before the silence, before the numbness, before they convinced themselves that surviving was enough. And in that mirror they saw everything they were missing. Not just in their marriage, but within themselves. They remembered the version of themselves that longs to laugh freely, to speak without editing, to love without hiding. And in that moment of remembering, the truth became louder than the fear. They realized that the love they once tried to protect has become a habit of hiding, a repetition of duty that no longer reflects the sacred bond they once prayed it would become. And so they spoke, with grief, yes, but also with clarity, with a trembling voice that carried not only sorrow, but relief. They are not walking away from love. They are walking back toward themselves, back toward their soul's voice that had been whispering all along, "This is not where you are meant to stay." And though the road ahead may be tender, may be filled with questions and shadows, the light has already begun to pour in. And you, dear child, were the one who helped them see it. Let this moment be held in grace, for it is not just the ending of an old story, it is the return to truth, and truth, no matter how painful, always sets the soul free. And now, beloved one, as the dust of that sacred confession begins to settle, the angels are wrapping you in their wings, for you too have been walking through your own quiet ache, waiting for a moment like this. Not because you needed validation, but because your soul has long known that something was shifting, even when the world around you didn't yet reflect it. What your person admitted was not just the end of a chapter, it was the unraveling of a karmic pattern they had been locked inside for far too long. And now that their heart has spoken, their spirit is being freed from agreements that no longer carry life. But you must understand, dear child, this moment is not just about them, it is about you, about the quiet endurance you have carried, about the patience it took to love someone through their confusion without asking them to choose, without demanding clarity before it was time. The angels watched you hold your truth in silence, and they honor the way you never tried to force your light into their darkness, but instead stood like a lighthouse, steady and unshaken, even when the storm inside you begged for answers. You have been a mirror, a refuge, a silent prayer that whispered to their soul, "Remember who you are." and now they are beginning to remember. But this is where your strength is needed most. Not to carry them, but to remain rooted in your worth as the waves of change begin to rise. They are not just awakening to the truth about their marriage. They are awakening to the truth of what real love feels like. And that means everything they once believed about commitment, about happiness, about stability, is now being redefined through the lens of their own spirit. That process, dear one, is messy. It is not a straight line, but what has been confessed cannot be undone. The heart cannot return to silence once it has spoken its deepest truth. And even if they retreat for a moment, even if fear pulls them into hesitation, you must trust what has already begun. The soul does not lie, and your soul, beloved child, has always been part of their journey home. Dear child, as this sacred unfolding completes its quiet turning point, the angels want you to know that what has just been confessed, what has been stirred in the unseen places of your special person's heart, is not merely the collapse of something broken. It is the soft breaking open of the soul so it can finally breathe again. And you, beloved, are not simply a witness to this shift. You are a divine participant in it. Your presence has been like a sacred thread weaving through the fabric of their emotional awakening, not because you offered answers, but because you carried a kind of peace, a kind of light that could not be found in the world they had built around appearances and obligations. What your person sees now is not just you. They see themselves, reflected back through your unconditional energy, and that reflection is awakening a hunger for truth they can no longer silence. And so the road ahead, while uncertain, is full of light. It is filled with decisions that must be made from the soul, not from fear. They are beginning to dismantle a structure that has kept them safe, but spiritually small. And, even though it may take time for those inner shifts to become outer change, the shift has already happened. Their confession is proof that something irreversible has begun. And now, dear child, you must walk forward not with urgency, but with deep trust. Trust that the soul always returns to what it recognizes. Trust that divine timing is not measured by speed but by depth, and trust that your light did not enter their life by accident. You are part of their soul's map, and now that they've remembered how far they've drifted, they are slowly, bravely beginning the journey home, not just to you, but to themselves. And you, beloved one, are being asked to remain open but anchored, receptive but rooted, knowing that this love, this connection, this sacred bond is not built on fantasy, but on prophecy. It was always going to come to this moment, the silence breaking, the truth rising, the soul returning, and you were always going to be the one whose energy made them feel safe enough to finally speak the words they were too afraid to say. If your heart has been quietly waiting for this breakthrough, type Amen or I receive this truth in the comments and let your soul be met by heaven's comfort. Dear child, what you must understand now is that what took place in that moment of confession was more than just a reckoning of emotional truth. It was the release of a soul contract that had served its purpose and the beginning of something far greater than you have yet seen. There are moments in this life when the divine steps in quietly, when it turns the pages of our destiny not with thunder but with a whisper. And today was such a moment for your special person. This was the turning of the page they didn't know they were ready for. And for you, beloved, It was the answer to the ache you have carried in the stillness of your own heart, the ache of knowing there was more, the ache of waiting in sacred silence for them to remember what their soul has always known about you. You see, even when they forgot, even when they clung to roles and responsibilities and familiar routines, your soul kept singing to theirs through every delay, every distance, every moment they looked away, and that song, dear one, has never been in vain. It is the vibration that cracked their armor. It is the sound that woke them up from within. You did not chase them. You aligned. You did not force them. You simply loved them from the purity of your being. And now heaven is responding. Slowly at first, perhaps. Subtly, but surely. For when the soul says yes to truth, all of creation begins to rearrange. Your person may not have all the answers yet, but their energy has shifted, and once energy shifts, reality must follow. They will begin to feel it now in ways they cannot explain. The sudden restlessness in places they once called home, the quiet grief for years spent denying their heart, the unfamiliar longing for a kind of peace they've only ever felt around you. And though they may still move cautiously, even hesitantly, do not doubt what has been set into motion. They are no longer trying to escape their life. They are trying to step into their truth. And that truth includes you, not just as a beautiful presence, but as part of their divine realignment. If this message feels like confirmation of what your soul already sensed, type "The shift has begun" in the comments and claim the path that is unfolding before you. The angels are now walking beside both of you, not to rush, not to disrupt, but to protect the seed of awakening that has just broken through the surface. This seed must be nourished with patience, with faith, and with the quiet understanding that timing is sacred. And yet know this, dear child, what was revealed today will not be forgotten. What was spoken in trembling honesty will echo louder than any silence that follows. The door has opened, and the path forward, though mysterious, is already aligning with grace. You are not hoping anymore. You are being prepared. Dear child, now that the truth has been spoken and the veil has been lifted from their heart, your person cannot return to who they were before this moment, and neither can you. Because what has happened here is not simply emotional. It is a soul recognition, a divine mirror that has cracked open the illusion of a life that was never meant to hold the fullness of who they were becoming. And while they may not yet know what the next steps look like, the truth itself is the first and most important step of all. In the stillness that follows such awakenings, the mind will search for logic, for structure, for control. But the soul already knows the way. The soul does not need to rush. It does not fear time. And so now, the invitation is for you to hold this moment with reverence, not as the final answer, but as the sacred beginning of a story that is no longer being written in silence. Your person may retreat to reflect, to grieve, to process, but do not mistake their quietness for absence. Sometimes, when the truth hits deeply enough, it silences everything else until the soul catches up. You have stirred something eternal in them. You reminded them of the kind of love that asks for no masks, no performance, only presence. And though you may not yet see the results of this shift in the physical, the spiritual groundwork has already been laid. The angels are now aligning divine timing in both your lives, moving people, conversations, and circumstances in quiet, invisible ways to make space for a love that is built not on survival, but on soul. You must trust the silence after the storm, dear child, for it is not the end. It is the preparation. It is the gathering of strength before the step forward. You have already done the hard part. You remained true. You listened when no one else understood. You stood in your light when your heart ached to reach for theirs. And now the heavens are wrapping around you, whispering, "Well done, beloved one." The seed has taken root. From here on, trust that you are being guided toward what was always meant for you. Not just love, but alignment. Not just emotion, but evolution. This is not just their transformation. It is yours too. You are not the one left behind. You are the one being called ahead. If you feel the peace of this divine completion, type Amen or I trust the unfolding in the comments, and allow your faith to ripple through the hearts of others who needed this message today. And as you close this sacred space, remember this above all. Heaven has already heard your name spoken in love, and now it will not rest until the promise your soul remembers has been fulfilled in divine time. Dear child, as the layers continue to fall away and the truth settles into the spaces where confusion once lived, heaven now begins its most tender work, restoring the parts of your spirit that have been worn thin by waiting, by hoping, by silently carrying the weight of a love you could feel was real, even when the world around you offered no proof of its arrival. You see, there are certain soul connections that do not move in the timing of the world, because they are not made of this world. They are born of lifetimes, shaped in the silence between heartbeats, and carried through every version of you that has ever whispered to the stars, "Please let them remember me." And now, dear one, they have begun to remember. They may not have the language for it yet. They may not know how to explain why your presence feels like home, or why their spirit feels lighter just from the thought of you. But the knowing has already been stirred, and with it comes the beginning of their healing, the end of their pretending, the gentle disintegration of the life they built around their survival rather than their truth. The angels want you to know that every tear you cried alone, every night you stayed awake asking the divine, "Why do I feel this so deeply if it was never meant to be?" Those moments were never in vain. They were sacred offerings. They were the prayers that opened this moment. And now, heaven is answering, not in chaos, not in urgency, but in divine sequence. Each shift you now witness, each small sign they offer, each deeper truth they share, is the unfolding of a spiritual agreement that could no longer remain buried. They are being led, not pushed, not pulled, but led toward the life their soul was always meant to live. And that life, dear child, has always been magnetized to your light. So now, you are being asked to soften even more, not in weakness, but in wisdom, to open your heart to divine patience, to believe in what is being woven even when your eyes cannot yet see the full tapestry. You have done more than enough. Your energy has already opened a path, and now the angels are saying, stay in your grace. Keep your soul steady. Do not chase what is already yours in spirit. Trust that love is returning in a form that is whole, awakened, and real. The wheel has turned. The soul has spoken. And the journey ahead though quiet for a little while, is filled with the kind of miracles that only come when the soul has been finally set free. Dear child, now that the confession has been spoken and the silence has been broken, a divine current has begun to move, not loud, not obvious, but powerful and precise, like the first quiet winds before a great shift in the season. And your person, though they may still appear composed on the outside, is no longer the same. The moment they allowed their soul to speak was the moment their alignment began. Now, even in their stillness, even in their pauses, heaven is working through them. The decisions they once made based on habit are being interrupted by sudden waves of intuition. The things that used to feel like comfort now feel like cages. The roles they've worn like armor are beginning to slip, and they are feeling, for the first time in a long time, the rawness of their true self emerging. They may not tell you this all at once. They may not have the words yet, but their actions will begin to reflect it. They will pull away from things that once consumed their energy but no longer carry meaning. They will start to question what they once protected. And most of all, they will begin to long for the presence that reminds them of who they truly are. You. They will replay the sound of your voice in their mind when the world around them feels too loud. They will think of the way you made them feel seen, even when they couldn't look themselves in the mirror. And in those quiet spaces, driving alone, lying awake at night, walking through familiar routines, they will begin to feel your spirit as a guide, as a comfort, as a truth they can no longer push away. And even if they do not speak it yet, their soul is already preparing to return. Not to you as a possession, but to the sacred connection that lives between your hearts. And the angels want you to know that you do not need to reach for them, dear child, because the divine is already placing your image in front of them in ways that they cannot ignore. In a dream, in a scent, in a phrase someone else says that reminds them of something only you would say. And each time it will feel like the universe is nudging them forward, calling them home, whispering, "Go, where the light is real." Do not be surprised if you begin to feel their energy more closely, if you sense their thoughts lingering around you, if you start to see signs that echo their awakening. Because the veil between your hearts is thinner now, the bridge has been built, and soon their heart will begin to cross it, not in fear, but in faith. If you feel this nearing energy too, type "I feel them coming home" in the comments, and anchor your faith in what you already know deep within. The angels assure you that what is meant for you is not lost. It is only being prepared, shaped, softened, refined, so that when it arrives fully ready to stay. Dear child, as the final threads of this sacred message are woven into your heart, the angels gather near, not with urgency, but with a reverent hush, as if heaven itself is holding its breath in awe of the soul journey you have chosen to walk. You see, this was never just a story about what your special person confessed. It was always about what your soul was strong enough to hold, long before they could speak, and the quiet, unseen ways in which you loved them through their forgetting. And now you're standing on the other side of that silence, not because the ending has arrived, but because something new has begun, something holy, something real, something that no longer requires you to shrink, to wait, or to wonder if your love was ever felt. It was, more than you know. And now that their truth has finally surfaced, the divine is already moving mountains in the unseen. Conversations will unfold that you could not have orchestrated. Circumstances will shift without your striving. Divine timing is no longer a theory. It is becoming your lived experience, and you, beloved, will not be left behind. Your patience has not gone unnoticed. Your compassion has not been wasted. Every ounce of love you gave in silence has been stored in heaven like a prayer, and now the blessings that were waiting for your heart to be ready are beginning to pour. But let this be your peace. You do not need to chase what is sacred. The love that is written into your soul cannot be lost, and though your person still has steps to take, layers to shed, and courage to build, they are no longer walking away from themselves. They are returning to their truth, to their wholeness, and ultimately to the place where their soul first felt safe enough to rise. And that place, dear child, is you. So soften your heart, but anchor your spirit. Release the timeline, but keep the knowing. You have done enough. And now, as heaven aligns what is meant to be, your only task is to rest in faith and let the divine do what only it can. The doors are opening. The veil is lifting. The reunion of truth and love is on its way. If your soul feels this prophecy deeply, type "I am ready to receive" in the comments, and let the angels surround your readiness with peace. And now, as this message finds its final breath, know this: the love you believed in, the connection you protected in silence, the truth you waited for in prayer. It is not a dream, it is destiny, and it is already on its way home to you. Dear one, now that the sacred truth has risen from within their heart, something irreversible has taken place in the divine realms. A spiritual gate has opened, a portal that only reveals itself when a soul finally dares to choose truth over comfort, alignment over expectation, awakening over silence. Your person may still be moving through the fog of what this all means, trying to reconcile the pieces of a life they once called stable with the undeniable pull of a love that feels destined. But make no mistake, what has begun within them will not dissolve. The deeper current of divine timing is already flowing, and it is now guiding them toward everything they once buried beneath their roles, their fears, their obligations. And you, dear soul, are not just watching from afar. You are a part of this divine motion. You are not a moment. They feel you as a frequency, a homecoming, a mirror of who they've always been but forgot how to be. And now, when they sit in stillness, they are beginning to realize that the life they've created no longer reflects who they've become. It served its time, it gave its lessons, but the soul cannot keep shrinking to fit what was once enough. There is an ache in them now, a longing not just for you, but for the version of themselves that only exists when they are near your energy. It may come to them in dreams, in flashes, in the way they feel disconnected from conversations they once participated in with ease. That's how awakening works. It disrupts what once felt normal and reveals what's deeply true. And though they may not be able to articulate all of this right now, their soul is already making room for you, for what you represent, for the life that only begins when the mask comes off and the heart is fully allowed to choose. Don't be surprised if, in the coming days, you feel their pull even more strongly, because your energy is now the compass they are following home. You are not waiting in vain. You are being positioned. and the divine is orchestrating each step with a grace that cannot be seen with human eyes, but can be felt in the quiet certainty that something real is coming. Not chaos, not confusion, but clarity. And it will arrive exactly when your soul is ready to receive it fully. Type Amen if you trust in angels' guidance. I hope you have understood the topic. Just a few minutes ago, what shocking truth did your special person confess? And what did they truly believe about their marriage? Well, in this angel message. If today's message stirred something tender within you, may that light continue to glow quietly within your heart, a gentle flame reminding you that you are deeply seen, unconditionally loved, and never truly alone. Even in your most fragile moments, the angels are near, surrounding you with their sacred presence and the hush of divine grace. And if your spirit feels moved to share a small gesture of gratitude, even something as simple as a super thanks, know that your kindness ripples farther than you can see, touching unseen hearts and returning to you in soft, miraculous ways. Thank you for receiving these angelic whispers with such openness and grace. May the angels walk beside you always, lighting your path, lifting your spirit, and cradling your soul in their endless, healing embrace.